Okay, thanks, Raul. Um, if we can go on to the next slide, just so that we can take a quick look at what we're going to be doing today and also give you a little hint of next week. Today, we're going to be talking about decisions when you start to think about going to college and paying for college. And we're going to start with a very fundamental question, which is, should you go to college, that is? Is college worth that money? And then we're going to talk a little bit about those advantages relative to employment and get into a little bit of detail on where and how do I start this decision-making process around the type of degree, the cost, the funding. But we're really going to be spending most of our time next week talking about funding. There are a number of ways to pay for college. It's a big expense, so it won't surprise you that we're going to need a full hour to go through the different types of funding like grants, scholarships, federal state funding, get into student loans, but also talk a little bit about how to save for college. And finally, what do you do when you are ready to apply for college? Not all of the detail, but just in general, how to think about how to get into that process. And finally, I wanted to mention that after we finish this paying for college two-part session in May, we're going to be talking in more general terms about continuing education. So college is one big avenue for learning and growing and developing a path to a better paying job, for example. But there are other ways of thinking about that. And we want to give you some information relative to what we call continuing education and the opportunities that might be of interest to you that are not necessarily college driven. So with that, let's move on to the next slide. Should you go to college? The basis of this presentation is, yeah, this is a good idea, and we're going to be staying focused on that in general as a good idea, but there are some significant buts. And the first is, as I think everybody knows, college is very expensive. And it seems to be getting more expensive with every passing year. However, college can be worth it with a few ifs. And the first is if you graduate. Getting that degree is very important. There is very little value to half a degree, getting halfway through a program and then dropping out, unless you just love to learn and you don't really care how you use that learning after you stop it. But most people do care about using that degree, and so that means you need to graduate. College is worth it if you can pay back any loans you have, the debt that you get from borrowing money to pay for college. And the bottom line here is it's important not to borrow too much. And we'll do a lot of thinking about that next week, but this is an important, when you think about the funding on the funding side, at some point, some people discover that they paid way too much for the education they got. Finally, college is worth it if you, and I know this sounds a little strange, but if you know where you're going, if you have a goal, a specific goal. And many people say, well, I want to go to college to get a better job or to get a good job. That is a frequent reason for going to college. And it can be very true that it is a good way to get a good job or a better job going to college. But it's important to do your homework. And what I mean by that is, what do you mean when you think about a better job or a good job? You know, what are you thinking about? Do you know what the field is? In other words, are you thinking about a job in healthcare or maybe in IT? even just having that much of an idea starts to help you think about why you're doing this idea, thinking about this idea of college. And then you can start to think about, well, how would I get to that IT job? Those are important questions to be thinking about even before you start to think about which college to go to. And let me just tell you a quick story about some people I knew when I was working at a very good employer. It was a bank, and the bank was very generous, and the bank said, we will help pay for a college degree in business. We're in business. We want our employees to have a good business background. And these employees would say, yes, I want a better job. And they would go and get the degree. And the bank helped pay for it. And they were very happy. And then they said, okay, now I want my better job. But they hadn't changed to a different job at the bank. They didn't apply for a different job at the bank. They were still doing the same work at the bank. And the bank said, you're still doing the same job. We're not going to pay you more money to do the same job that you've been doing. And the point of the story is these employees hadn't really thought about what that meant to get a better job. They thought, well, if I have the degree, somehow I'll get more money. And that isn't the way it works. And some of them, and then the bank might say, well, you could have this job as a financial analyst. And the employee would say, I don't want to travel. And the bank would say, we're not going to pay you to have a degree where you're not using what you've learned. So again, the moral to the story is think about what you're going to learn and how you can use that to benefit that employer, as well as yourself. Another reason that people want to go to college is personal growth. So I always like to think of that 18-year-old who's just finishing high school and wants to go off to college and knows, yeah, college is good to get a better job. College is good to get any job. But what's probably driving that young person is excitement about learning about the world, seeing a bigger horizon, meeting new people, all of that stuff. That's wonderful. The issues of cost may or may not be apparent, and the issues of cost may or may not be weighing very heavily on the parents as much as that student. But personal growth is an important reason that people do want to go to college. And you can imagine easily those younger folks that just getting out of school. And then finally, learning opportunity. There are some people who love to learn. And I have known a few that I don't think they really care how much it costs, because somehow they know how to spend some time and money, learn something, and they just know how to translate that into even better opportunities in the work world. And frankly, I think some of them don't even care. They're happy to pay the money because they just love to learn. And it's their way of going on vacation, frankly. But with that, let's take a look at the next slide and think for a minute about, as you're sitting here and thinking about how to pay for college, who are you thinking about when you think about paying for college? Who's going to go to college? Is it you? Or maybe your children? Another relative? Maybe a friend? Who are you thinking about as you think about going to college? If you could just write in the chat box somebody that occurs to you as a possible person going to college, or maybe going to college, or wondering about going to college. We'll give you about 30 seconds Who's going to college? Is anybody writing anything in the chat box?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything yet.
Oh,
So
I
you
did for my children.
Your children.
okay.
Okay. Okay, I see a son, some children.
Sons.
Okay.
Oh, Tim wants to go to college.
Okay. Tina.
Okay. Mint wants to go. So we've got,
All right. So we still have 5 people who had to tell us, why are you with this? Why are you with this? Maybe me. Okay.
maybe me.
Marisol and Padia's children.
Saba
Okay.
wants to go to college. She will go to college.
Saba's going to go to college. Okay.
We're going to try to tailor a little bit of the presentation to thinking about, okay, we're talking about a kid. So let's think a little bit about,
So Barb, right now it's half and half.
that's what I was thinking. It's about half and half children, or maybe you.
Right.
When might these children be going to college? Is it going to be in a few years or maybe 10 years, a longer period of time? When might you be going to college? In a year or two, or maybe further down the line, maybe 5 years from now? Can you just put in, how about just answering? Just unmute yourself. When might you go to college, or when might your child be going to college?
Can I try?
Yeah.
Maybe, all the time kids change mind. I like to go my son in college, maybe in the 5 years.
5 years for your son? Okay.
Yes. But I like to, he learn about like maybe accounting, but he changed mind in general.
You're
So-
bringing up a very important point about how people can change their minds. That's a good point. And let's see if we can sort of circle around back to that.
Because I have
issue.
experience with that other my son. He was trying to engineer, but he won't change biochemistry. Now he graduate biochemistry, so all the time kids change mind.
Oh, really?
Yes, I have
Yeah.
experience with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ada Iris, when is your child going to college?
My son,
Yeah,
Mhm.
your son.
he's 5 years.
He's 5 years old.
No. Say again.
No, Mimi, let Ada Iris answer.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Ada
Uh,
Iris, when is your son going to college?
My son have in this moment just 8 years old, and I think in 7 years I need to. Now I have need a plan for the college for the future.
Uh-huh. Okay, so about 7 years from now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And Kadi, how about your child? When will your child go to college? Kadi?
Yeah. Maybe me, but I want to know now for my children because I have to know everything before.
Okay, so how old are they now?
8.
8?
Yes.
8?
Okay, so
Okay.
that's about 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then Timnit, when would you like to go to college?
I would say in about 2 years,
Okay.
because I have to do a lot of things before. I mean, before that, because I have to take GED. A lot of English classes before I have to do that. So,
Okay, and Saba, how about you?
Yeah, maybe 1 year I have to improve my English.
Okay, 1
Yeah.
year. And Marisol?
Well, maybe after 1 year to improve
Okay.
the rest my English.
Okay. All right. And Kibra, did you want to tell us anything? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
I just want to learn and enjoy with you, but my children is still in college. So I just want to learn.
Okay.
I don't have it.
All
Okay.
right. And how about you, Ornella?
My nephew?
Yeah, we can hear you. Are you interested in college for yourself or for somebody else?
My nephew.
She says her nephew.
Her nephew. Okay. All right. And when will he go to college? I can't hear it, Raul.
Neither can I.
Yeah, I can't hear her either. Ornella?
Well, maybe we can move on. I
Okay,
think
let's just
in
keep going
summary,
then. Yeah, I think we
in
could go
summary,
on.
we have several children who will be going to college roughly in 5 to 10 years. It depends on the age of the child. And then we've got several adults who may be interested in going to college, some kind of college, in 1 to 2 years. So a shorter time horizon. And the amount of time that you have to prepare is important to be thinking about as you think about these questions about going to college and being ready to go to college. So this is sort of helpful information as we help you think about these questions. So with that, shall we go on to the next slide, Deb?
Okay. So these are some of the reasons. Remember, Barb told you at the beginning that college can be a good idea if you can do all of the things that she said, if you can graduate, and if you can pay for it. And if you can do all of those things, then college is definitely worth the money when you can get jobs in the right places, and that you could get higher pay. Now, remember Barb's little story here, you actually sometimes have to take new jobs to get the higher pay. It might be a different job, but generally you get higher pay, more money, and generally you can get more steady employment. Steady employment means that you get to keep your job more frequently. So when we say unemployment, that's when you lose your job. And unemployment is lower when you don't have a college degree, and it's better when you do have a college degree. It's more likely that you can keep your job. And also there are benefits often that come with jobs, and usually you will get better benefits if you have a college degree. So some of those benefits are things like they will pay for your health care, your medical insurance. Medical insurance is very expensive. It's a lot of money. So if your employer helps you pay for that, then that's a benefit to you after you get a degree. And often the people who have college degrees, they get to have some time where they get to take away from work, but still get paid. So that would be paid time off. And that would be things like they pay you when you take a vacation, or they pay you when there's a federal holiday. A lot of jobs that don't have college degrees, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So this is a benefit. And then there are other benefits as well. Okay, so anybody have any questions about that? Okay, then I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to just give you some examples. So you don't have to worry too much about all these numbers, but what you can see is, remember when I said, generally you can have higher pay when you have a college degree. if you look at the amount of money that on average, this is not for everybody and it doesn't mean that you'll get this, but on average, usually, if you have a high school diploma or a GED and you get a job, you can make about $35,000 a year. You can make more with an associate's degree. That's a 2-year degree. And Barb, I think, is going to talk about that some more later. You can make about $41,000. And if you get a bachelor's degree, which is generally a 4-year program, if you go full time, 4 years, you can make about $59,000. So you can see there's a big gap. There's a big range between having a college degree or not having a college degree. Now, it also, those salaries, I said that they were average, that it matters what kinds of jobs you get. And so there are jobs that pay more and some jobs that pay less, even with college degrees. And the higher paying jobs are some of the ones that I think you guys already mentioned, of engineering or technology, computer work, science, math. So those are generally the jobs where if you get a college degree, you can expect to earn more money. So usually more than things like being a teacher. It's not, we don't think it's necessarily the right thing, but that's just the way the world is. Okay. And then better employment, I talked about that a little bit, but again, these are just some examples. So remember we said unemployment is when you don't have a job, and usually unemployment shows up as a percentage. How many people in the population are working or not working? And the percentage of people who have a high school diploma, 5 people out of every 100 have unemployment when they have a high school degree, and you can see that it's much lower. It's better to have a job. So it's only 2.8% unemployment if you get the 4-year bachelor degree. Okay, so now that I've said all of those numbers, the salaries and the percentages unemployment, I want you to remember that this is a very strange economy right now because of the pandemic, because of COVID-19, and because of all of the economic things that have happened, and all of the industries, the places where there are jobs that had trouble with all of the things that got closed or that they weren't allowed to have people in. So these numbers are going to generally be good again at some point, but not necessarily right now because of the pandemic. Okay, so Barb is now going to talk to you about how to decide what kind of degree to get.
Okay, when you start to think about what type of degree you're going to need, really the starting point is back to that point that I made at the beginning, which is what is your goal? And trying to be a little bit clearer on what is that job that you would like to have. Is it in healthcare? Is it in business? Maybe it's in tech. If you start to think about in general where you think you would like to work, what you think you're good at, that's an important first step. And now let's just take a look at a couple of the big degrees that are available in this country. And when people are talking about going to college, they're usually referring to one of these 2 degrees, at least for starters. The first is the associate's degree. This is a 2-year, this is full-time, a 2-year degree. And when you think of the types of jobs that you could get with an associate's degree, there's a lot in healthcare, for example. Here, physical therapist assistant, radiation, that's the X-ray machine. Therapist is another one. Nursing assistant is another one. Legal assistant, that's not healthcare, that would be more on the business side. Lots of those jobs that have the term assistant in them can be associated with an associate's degree. And that is appealing to some people who would like to get a good job and don't want to spend too much time or too much money to get that job. The bachelor's degree is the 4-year degree, and we mean 4 years full time. So it's a fairly significant commitment of time and resources in study. The kinds of jobs that you can get with a bachelor's degree, again, engineering, operations manager, if you're interested in the business, on the business side, all kinds of software, hardware type IT, developers and technicians, teachers fall into this category. If you're thinking doctor or lawyer, you'd start with the bachelor's degree, but then you'd have to go on to more schooling, another 3 years at least for doctor and lawyer. But just to give you a sense of when you think about different types of jobs, where do you start looking as far as the degree programs? So with that, if we go on to the next page, as you start to think about degrees, and we're talking about the types of jobs, so what jobs are you or your child interested in? Shall we start there? Does anybody, for those parents in the room, have you talked with your children a little bit about it's the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what do your children tell you at this point? I know my children like to say, baseball player. Neither one of them was any good at sports, but that's what they wanted to be. But besides the baseball players and the basketball players, what do your children want to be?
My son wants to be astronaut.
An astronaut.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
that's exciting. And that would take a lot of engineering, math, science, engineering. Yeah. That's a bachelor's degree, I'd say for sure, and then some, but that is exciting.
Yeah.
Not.
Like maybe say they change their mind every time and a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately and fortunately, children like to change their minds as they test their ideas out on the world and on you, and discover what they're good at and maybe what they're not so good at. That's all about learning and growing. How about some other children and what they said they might like to be when they grow up?
Actor.
Actor.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Actor.
An actor.
Actor.
Huh.
Now that's an interesting choice for, which route do you take? This is a question of, do you think about college and go to college because getting into that discipline, becoming an actor is so difficult that the first thing is you can do acting when you're in college. There are drama classes to take, music classes to take. A lot of the arts is built into, especially the 4-year colleges. But what if it's more difficult than you can, and you can't get that job? At least you've got a degree. And maybe there's another job that you can move into because you have that college degree. That's what some parents would argue, is follow your heart, follow your dream, but get the degree so that you don't starve. Actor, okay. other,
I have my 13 years old. He want to be computer science.
computer science?
Yes.
The children who I take care of them,
Mm-hmm.
the boy told of your parents and say he want to be my engineer.
An engineer,
Yeah, mining.
mining engineer.
Yeah, because we want to be rich. So because he want to find rocks with gold. So yeah,
He wants to find
He wants to find gold.
gold. That's what I thought
Yeah.
you said. And I was like, well,
yeah. So it's your idea.
Okay. All right.
okay.
How about the people who want to go to college themselves? How
Yeah.
about you, Marisol? What do you want to do?
Well, I want to be to study healthcare or therapy.
Therapy or hair cutting?
No. Therapy and like psychology therapy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Psychology.
All right, good. Okay, and Timnit? Do you want to tell us what you were interested in going to college?
Yeah, nursing or nursing assistant.
Okay.
That's get provided. Yeah.
All right, and Saba?
Yeah, the same to like nursing assistants in medical field.
Okay.
Okay. So have you had a chance to talk or think about the type of degree that might be required? It seems like the youngsters, your children are looking at, for the most part, 4-year degree programs to be an astronaut, to be a computer scientist, an engineer. Those are usually 4-degree type programs to be able to do that kind of work. How about for the adults? Have you thought about the type of degree that might be required for what you're thinking about? Have you thought about what?
2 years degree.
Or have you talked to any people who have these jobs? How did they get there? Do you know anybody who is a nurse? Do you know anybody who is a nursing assistant? Do you know how they got that job? Maybe not.
I don't understand the question. Could you repeat, please?
Okay, there are a couple of people who are saying they're interested, for example, in being a nurse or a nursing assistant.
Mhm.
Have you talked to anybody who has that job? Have you asked them the question, how did you get your job? How did you study to learn how to be a nurse, or what did you have to study to become a nursing assistant?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I ask the people who I know work in the hospital or the clinic. Say, how do you study, or where do you study in the college or something different? So
Yeah.
I ask.
Good.
Exactly. That's great. One good source of information, if you're thinking about a job, is if you know somebody who has that job. And
Newspaper is fine too. Newspaper.
Yes. But you can learn from other people about how they studied, what they studied, where they studied. What school did you go to?
Mhm.
How did you
Yeah.
get that?
Yeah, but I think Mimi makes a good point that if you look at descriptions of jobs, when they're open jobs, often it will tell you what kind of degree you need. It will tell you how much education you need. So
Yep.
that's also a good way to learn things, is to look at job advertisements. And I think, Raul, you've been doing some work with that, with showing people things on LinkedIn and some of the other sites, right? And Indeed.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's keep moving.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking, again, we're talking about where do you start and how do you think about getting this degree? And so now we're narrowing it down to not simply healthcare, but we're thinking not just healthcare, but I'm interested in being a nurse or a nurse's assistant, for example. So what might the next steps be? Well, the first is to plan your degree program, with the emphasis on planning. And what that means is to know the courses that you need to take to get your degree. And I know this sounds rather obvious, but don't take courses you don't need. So if you know exactly what you need for this degree, then you're probably not going to make the mistake of taking courses you don't need, but sometimes people get confused. So it makes sense to pay attention and study the catalogs and ask for help if you're not sure. In addition, as you think about the type of job that you want and therefore the degree that you need to get, think about the possibility anyway of going to a 2-year school first and transferring to a 4-year school if you want to save some money. The example that I like to use is a student that I had who wanted to be an accountant. And so what she did was she went to Montgomery College first to study both basic accounting and English, because she was coming from another country and her English was not very good. From Montgomery College, she transferred to the University of Maryland. So for her 3rd and 4th year, she studied accounting at the University of Maryland, graduated from the University of Maryland with a degree in accounting, and very quickly got a job as an accountant. So that's a way for somebody who knows where they want to go. She wanted to be an accountant, to reduce the costs of getting that degree, because as you saw, and you will see, I think, some more, these 2-year schools are less expensive than the 4-year schools, and we'll get into that in a minute. A couple of other things to think about is something called the College Level Examination Program, or CLEP. And this can get you credits for beginning courses. Now, not all colleges do this. Not all colleges accept these test results, and not all will give you credit. But if you know what which degree you're working on, and if you have either you've taken courses in a school either in this country or your home country, it might be worth looking into this program and finding out if you could use if these tests could be used to give you credit. Another way of thinking about this is for those of you who are thinking about your children. When they're in high school, there should be the opportunity. Most Maryland high schools have these advanced placement courses. Advanced placement courses will give your child an opportunity to take college level instruction. And with that, if they take the test and do well on the test, then they don't have to take those introductory courses in college. So you don't have to, again, you don't have to take a course that you don't really need. Back to the don't take courses you don't need idea. So those are some things to think about as you are working on this, this topic of how to decide.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about cost, the cost of college, and you need to understand what it's going to cost to go to the different schools that you might be looking at. So Barb just told you about her student who went to Montgomery College for 2 years and then transferred to the University of Maryland for 2 years, because generally 2-year colleges are cheaper than the 4-year colleges. And I'm going to show you those numbers in a minute. And then also public colleges and universities are more, they're less money, they're cheaper than the private ones. So if you go to the state of Maryland, that will be cheaper than a private college in this state or another state. And costs include tuition and fees. So tuition is the cost of the courses themselves, and then there's a whole bunch of fees that could come about, and we're going to talk about them in another minute. But an example, again, looking at Montgomery College, costs about $5,000 for the 2-year program. That's if you go full-time for 2 years. You can obviously take one course at a time and stretch it out and do it over however long you need to do it. But generally we call them a 2-year college because if you went full-time, that would be how long it would take you to get a degree. So a 2-year college like Montgomery College is about $5,000 a year. The University of Maryland is twice as much. It's about $10,000 a year. And then Johns Hopkins, which is up in Baltimore and is a private school, costs a whole lot more. You can see about $50,000 a year. So that's a private school. So let's talk about this a little bit more.
Miss Deb,
Yes.
this is included with the apartment included, only with just exactly the class.
Yeah, that's just for the classes. And then, you have to have places for them to live if they don't live at home. So that's a cost. And so we're going to talk about some of the fees. Remember, I told you I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So it's very expensive to go to college. And that's one of the reasons that you want to decide that you really want to go to college and that you're going to be able to do the whole thing and come out with a graduation with a degree. Because Barb told you at the very beginning, if you only go part way through and you only take a couple classes, usually that doesn't count for much. And then you've paid that money and then you don't have a degree, it won't necessarily help you with getting a better job. So just think about all of those things for yourself and for your children. Okay, so you need to decide on the cost. You need to know where you live makes a big difference. So remember, we just looked at the numbers for Montgomery College. That's for if you live here in Montgomery County. You can see that for tuition, it's $5,000 if you live here. But if somebody wanted to come from Baltimore to go to Montgomery College, it would cost them $9,600. So that's a big difference. And the same thing with the University of Maryland. So University of Maryland, when you live here in Maryland and you're a Maryland resident, costs $10,000 a year for tuition. But there are a lot of people who come from other states who come from there's a lot of people who come from New York to go to the University of Maryland. They have to pay $36,000 a year. So it makes a really big difference when you're looking at colleges for yourself or for your children to know whether you want to be looking at the schools that are here, where you're a resident, or if you want to look at other schools, and then you're probably having to do a lot more to help find funding to pay for it. And that's what we're going to talk about next week in a lot of detail of how to get funding. But you just want to think about what the total cost is going to be of going to college, because it's a very big investment. It's a lot of money.
So, excuse me. So for Maryland, for Montgomery College, is each 5,000 for each year?
For each year, if you take all of the courses for full time.
Okay.
Okay. So again, we're just giving you numbers for if you're full time. If you only take one course at a time, you only pay for the one course at a time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's just ask everybody, have you looked at colleges yet? Have you decided where you think you might want to go? Anybody?
Well, I looked for Montgomery College.
Okay.
So,
All right, good.
Montgomery College.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how about for the folks who have children? Are you thinking about Montgomery College or University of Maryland or other schools?
My son is going to in Towson University.
Okay. Okay.
Mine too.
University of Maryland.
University of Maryland. Okay.
Yeah. My son is Montgomery College.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
It's great to be having these conversations. So when your children are younger, as you can help them start thinking through these options for them.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I think all of you talked about public schools. So, Montgomery College is the county, and Towson and University of Maryland are the state. So I think those are all very good choices and probably more affordable than some of the other choices that you could make. So good. Okay.
I have a question with Miss Barbara. First of all, when she say for the gentleman, she say he was working in the bank. The gentleman, they give him big opportunity for him to study, and when he graduate, to work him back in the same place. Why they give opportunity to study and then he graduate? Why they don't change his place, or why they don't pay no more money?
Okay, so that's a good question. Why doesn't he automatically get a better job? And the answer is it depends on the employer. An employer could say, you're going into this program, and at the end of the program, if you successfully complete it, you will get this job. But the employer that I had said, we will give you this benefit. Remember how Deb talked about benefits?
Yeah.
So this is a benefit, but it's not a guarantee for a better job. So it's giving the employee an opportunity to learn, but after the employee does the learning, the employee is responsible for saying, now that I have this knowledge, I want to use it in a different job in this bank. And if the employee doesn't identify a different job, then in this case, the bank says, I will not pay more for you to do the same job you've been doing. So it's a different way of thinking about the support the employer is giving. And in this case, there was no guarantee, because the bank, I think, was thinking, what if we have one job, but we have 4 people who are studying to be able to take this one job? We can't promise it to 4 people. that, each one of them has to say, I'm interested, and then the bank gets to choose the best one. And that's in effect, it's a different way of offering a benefit to the group of employees. They're trying to be generous, but then they can't promise the person a better paying job at the end of it.
So I think the other thing to think about on that is that it gives you an opportunity to get a promotion with a different job. So remember, Barbara said that the person wanted to stay in the same job, and you get more money when you get a different job. And sometimes people will go to a different company then to get more money also. So there's a lot of different things that can happen that will help you get a better job once you get the degree. But you also have to be careful, because sometimes the benefit where the company pays for an education says you have to stay at my company for another year or two, so that I didn't just spend my money to have you go somewhere else. So there's a lot of things that you just need to know about if you're going to do a program like that, that you need to understand what it means for you and what your obligations are, what you say that you will do. Okay?
So sometimes it's not good to get the benefits, right?
Sometimes the benefits don't work for you, right? So they might be good for some people and not other people. And you just need to be sure that that is what you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You have to think about what is the work you want to do in in a particular job, in a particular company, and which benefits are most important to you. For this bank, many, many people took this benefit of getting more education because a lot of them wanted to go eventually to a different job. And this bank was generous and said, that's okay. That's okay. We value the work you're doing here. We can't guarantee you the job that you want, but we will give you this learning opportunity. And so both sides are happy. But sometimes a better strategy, if you want to stay at the job or stay at that employer, is to say, what is the best work I can do at this employer to make myself so valuable that they will give me a raise or give me a promotion for the work that I'm doing, rather than studying for. And that's, again, it has to do with your strategy for managing your career.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the cost of different schools. And remember, I said tuition is the cost of the classes, right? But that there could be other fees, and there are other costs as well. So you often have to buy books, you have to buy materials, you're going to need a computer. The parking, maybe you have to pay for parking if you're a commuting student, or shuttle services, technology. There could be all kinds of technology fees. So you just need to know all of the costs and be ready to pay for all of them, because there can be some large numbers, some large costs, some large expenses that are in addition to what the courses cost. Okay. So this is just for you to do a little research, because you always want to do research and to compare different schools. And so there is a website that we're giving you that's called the U.S. Department of Education College Scoreboard. And what it does is it compares all those costs that we just talked about. So the tuition, the fees, and then if you can get money to help pay, it can count that in too. And we're going to talk a lot about that next week. So we're not going to spend a lot of time today. But you could get money from a lot of different places to help you pay. And some of them you can get grants and scholarships that you don't have to pay back. And sometimes you have to take out loans that you do have to pay back. So we're going to talk about that next time. But you need to know, you need to figure all of those things in. And the other thing that you want to think about, that's more than just the cost of these schools, is you want to know whether they're a good school or not. And what makes a good school? A good school means that the people who go into the programs can graduate. There's a lot of schools that have been in the news a lot lately that people don't get to graduate. They just, you know, the school goes out of business, or they get a degree and it's not helping them get a job or a good salary. So this website helps you compare the rate of graduation, how many people who went to college actually graduated and got their degree, and then what they were able to earn after they got their degree. And those are all important things. And the school's reputation, again, it means, is it a good school or is it a not so good school?
Era una foto. Lo que te mandé.
Okay. All right.
Miss Deb, what is reputation means?
Reputation means whether it's good or bad.
Oh,
Okay, so if it's got a good reputation, that means it's a good school. If it's got a bad reputation, it means that there's something that's wrong there and that you probably don't want to go.
okay.
Okay, and so things that would make a bad reputation is that it's very expensive, or that they make you take out a lot of loans, and then when you get out, you can't pay them back.
Yeah.
Or if people don't graduate, or if once people graduate, they don't get the things that they got told they would be able to do. They can't get the same kinds of jobs that they got told, and they can't earn enough money to pay back their loans. So there are schools that have those bad reputations, and you don't want to go there.
So we have to change which school is good, which school is bad.
Yes.
No.
Yes, and the schools that you all talked about for Montgomery College and University of Maryland and Towson State,
Yes.
those are all good schools with good
Yes.
reputations.
Yes. Okay.
So I think everybody who told us those things, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. And so very briefly, Barb is going to talk to you about funding and then tell you what we're going to talk about next week.
Okay, so we're starting to wrap this up. And just a touch on the next week's topic, which is funding, or ways to get money for college. There are 4 major ways to pay for college. The first 2, grants and scholarships. This is money that you get from some type of organization that you do not normally anyway have to pay back. Student loans is money, and there are different ways of getting it that you would have to pay back, and you pay back both the loan and the interest on the loan. This is a topic that has been in the news a lot. We'll certainly spend more time on this and how you do it and how to be careful in thinking about what you can afford and how much debt is appropriate. And then finally, savings. And savings is particularly important when you have more time. So it's usually more useful to think about this when you're thinking about your children, when you're talking about 5 years or 10 years before a college decision. And we'll spend some time talking about different ways to save for a college education. And that is primarily what we will be focused on next week. So let's wrap this up right now with just a couple of what I call big takeaways that we hope that this session has helped you think through. And the first is how important it is for you to know what your goal is for going to college, you or your child, so that you have that idea of what you're trying to get, what type of degree, and what type of work you or your youngster is thinking about longer term, recognizing, as several parents in the room have already commented, that especially for children, it's difficult for them to know when they're 10 what they want to be when they're 20 or 30. And then secondly, some of the basic information about the costs of college, what's driving the costs, the differences between the colleges, and a little bit of where the costs are coming from, whether it's tuition or fees, and what your possible choices are as you think about those big picture questions.